It's an issue that doesn't look like going away in a hurry, and neither do the chemicals.
We expect it to be in groundwater around the base for some time.
Investigations are still ongoing regarding potentially toxic firefighting chemicals once used at the RAAF base. Dr. Marianne Lloyd-Smith is a senior advisor to the National Toxic Network and backed the EPA's comments, saying, "Neither show any evidence of degradation in the environment, which means dealing with the contamination plume will be very difficult." But the Ballina-based toxicologist added there's a much bigger problem at hand, even if the contamination at Williamtown is contained. Even if the authorities can work out a way to pump out the groundwater and strip out these compounds, Australia has no available technology to destroy them. The EPA says it's evaluating the situation one step at a time.
Certainly we're looking at, in the short term, stopping the source. So we need to get control of the contamination on the base and then look at our options for managing it off-site.
Meanwhile, residents in the affected area are left to wait.
We do expect that the process to undertake a full human health risk assessment is going to take some months, so we don't expect to see changes to the investigation area.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
It will be implemented now. All the different agencies will know who's doing what and how, and they'll work together as a team rather than perhaps going over the top of each other.
The Catherine Hill Bay Bowling Club has long been a gathering place for locals, even providing shelter when the bay went up in flames in 2013. But now it seems business at the club has started to slow. Recent road closures around the area have limited access in and out of town. In a bid to boost patronage, Jeff Hancock has curated a show and shine surfboard meet, encouraging locals to swap, trade and showcase their pre-1990 vintage boards.
It's something we've been wanting to do for a while. It was just finding the right time and the right location.
The event is the first of its kind, with over 20 sellers expected to attend. Catherine Hill Bay has long been a town known for its laid-back surfing culture, even making a mark in Hollywood.
The history of Catho's been well documented, including a couple of movies made in the past.
Mr Hancock hopes the surfboard swap meet will remind people that the club is still open for business.
Most people come here to Catho and they think of the pub only. It's just nice to let people know there is somewhere else apart from the pub to have a meal and a drink, and the kids can play in the greens. It's a special place. That's probably the best way to put it. It's just a special place.
Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
What we've got is some of our latest commemorative coins. So we've got 2 coloured $2 coins and 100 years of Anzac coins. So they're all 2015 dated, and they're just pretty much the hottest coins at the moment.
They are the creme de la creme of flower arrangers who all take their passion
very, very seriously.
the Budding sport sees florists show creativity, flair and style.
Innovation, quality of floristry obviously. We look to make sure that we can't see any of what we call the mechanics of each arrangement.
A 30-minute time frame sees competitors go petal to the metal.
Are you feeling the pressure?
Right about now I am. I've got about 10 minutes to go, so we've got to finish it off before time calls.
When it came to the crunch, Western Australia's defending champion was happy with her bunch.
I'm really happy with my piece.
Is there lots of trash talking around here when it comes to the competitiveness?
No, not at all. We all get along like a house on fire and we all encourage each other and support each other.
Curry Stevie Mitchell was in awe of just being a finalist and had a blooming good time.
It's amazing. It's an awesome feeling. It's something different. I've never made it to this level before, so to make it here is awesome.
The winners will be announced later tonight. Michael Kane, NBN News.
We know what David Carney's left foot is capable of. Last night in the 57th minute, we got a reminder. The gaffer chuffed and jubilation for the 10,000 in attendance. The Victory's hoodoo in Newcastle continues.
I actually told him at half-time, you won't believe me, but I told him at half-time you're going to get the match winner. He'll have to justify that or not.
The majority of Jets had a spring in their step at recovery this morning. Lachlan Jackson's encouraging performance at left back will give selectors something to consider.
For a young guy that plays left side centre-half, to then be put at left-back position, thought he was outstanding.
I set myself some personal goals at the start of the year, and playing first team football is one of them. So it's good to get one on the weekend, and hopefully I can keep it going.
The Jets could have had the lead much earlier. Minutes later, another chance went begging. The Victory fired some warning shots of their own. The Jets returned hostilities. Ben Kennedy was superb in the first half and clutch in the second. The local boy stating a strong case for retention. The Victory failed to convert from close range. Kevin Muscat filthy with his side's execution. The only concern for the Jets, Brazilian import Leonardo, leaving with a limp.
I know Brisbane have got a game in hand, but top of the table, not a bad place to be.
Is that right? Oh, that's good. Nice of you to tell me. Happy days.
This is a complete blast from the past being here, especially because I competed exactly here like numerous times, and my mum's here with me today and we're just like, oh my gosh, like this is just so, it just seems like yesterday.
It was news many councils dreaded.
A change is needed in the local government sector.
An IPART report handed down on Wednesday declared Newcastle and Lake Macquarie councils were unfit for the future.
It's time that we put the ratepayers first.
I think the whole thing is an absolute schmozzle.
To merge or not to merge, that is now the question.
Councillors are receiving a briefing tomorrow on exactly what the IPART report says, and we're going to be discussing in an informal way options for us.
Holus bolus mergers for this Hunter region, where there are a lot of big council areas, isn't ever been a good solution.
Both councils have until November 18 to respond to the report, or the state government could force their hand. Although on Sydney radio this week, the Premier was non-committal.
There will be no forced amalgamations, yes or no?
Well, what I've said, Alan, is that my strong preference is for local councils to do that.
Strong preference. Will there be forced amalgamations?
We will consider the options at the end of this.
If the amalgamation does eventuate, merging two councils the size of Newcastle and Lake Macquarie won't come cheap. Now, the New South Wales State Government says they'll pledge up to $20 million to help with a joint venture, but to some, that's way off the mark.
The money the government have on the table does not nearly even cover the costs of trying to merge two very large councils.
Michael Kane, NBN News. They might look like your average cricket team, but they all have something in common: a second innings in life.
We're just here playing cricket, mate, making the most of our second chance.
Meet the Lucky Stars, where every player is a transplant donor or recipient.
If you look at our team here today, no one would be here playing cricket if it wasn't for someone giving up their organ.
The side travels the country to raise awareness for organ and tissue donations, and today they were in Newcastle taking on a Newcastle Invitational 11 captained by a former New South Wales Blue.
Look, I was so pleased. Every time I rang somebody up to ask them to play, they said yes. I said, great cause, I want to play in it. And we ended up with a really good side.
Batsman Steve Hollingsworth headed to the crease ready for battle. 7 years ago, he fought a much tougher one.
So I was a diabetic for 23 years nearly to the day, and wasn't very well controlled, but I was lucky enough to have kidney pancreas transplant before dialysis, going really well at the moment and playing cricket and enjoying it.
The man they call Booney was on the attack right from the outset.
We haven't had a true win yet, so we need to get on the scoreboard soon, so hopefully we'll have a win today.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
It's a sight for sore eyes. The main street of Dungog bursting with tourists.
It's great that people have come out in their droves, they're on the streets are alive, the businesses are doing well, the cafes are overflowing. We're definitely bringing the fun back to Fungog.
The 4-day festival, which celebrated great films, music and food, saw businesses reaping the rewards.
It's probably double what we would normally expect on a reasonably busy weekend. So we would say we're very happy. I think all the cafes and all the shops in the town would be very happy with the way business has gone.
It's been a hard slog for the community, which has spent the past 6 months trying to pick up the pieces from the cyclonic storm which devastated the town.
We're still mindful that there is recovery in process, so we certainly don't want to take it away, and we don't want to be seem to be partying around their devastation. But it really is great to bring some morale back to Dungog.
With this year's festival a hit, organisers are already looking for ways of making next year's bigger and better.
My mind is already ticking about program for next year and how we can improve things and how we can involve more people and bring some more exciting things to Dungog.
Meredith Gibbs, NBN News.
Having already qualified for the 2016 Grand Prix Series, Jason Doyle was keen to put on a show for the Australian fans. He finished third in his opening heat, but was only getting warmed up. Fellow Hunter rider Sam Masters was making his debut after being handed a wild card. But Masters took exception to the tactics of Denmark's Nicky Pedersen and wasn't afraid to express his frustration. Eventually going toe-to-toe with Pedersen's mechanics. Masters was fined $1,200, but it didn't seem to faze him.
Man, I'm having the time of my life, eh? I can't stop smiling. It's been awesome. I don't even really know what to say, but it's good that I can go out there and I've been mixing it up with the boys. It's been fun.
But the drama was far from over. Doyle was involved in a crash in Heat 14. But he recovered to qualify for the final. The decider didn't go according to plan. Replays showed just how frightening the crash was as Doyle was knocked out. He was treated at the stadium before being taken to hospital, where he's in a stable condition. Now in its fourth year, the Newcastle Cycle Classic attracted another strong field with a host of big names lining up for the Mick Chapman Memorial. The showpiece event featured 40 minutes of racing plus 3 extra laps. At the halfway point, a group of 6 riders had established a breakaway. Brothers Sam and Ben Hill were joined by the likes of Liam McGuinness, Chris Bogart, Michael Brown and Peter Milostic. Heading into the final lap, it was Sam Hill who'd edged in front by a decent margin. The Scone-bred cyclist then held on for an emotional victory.
This race means a lot to me. Mick Chapman was my old coach. He got me into it. He's to the point. He's so much respect for the guy, and it was really sad to see him go. So I'm just over the moon I can win this race for him.
Sporting plenty of battle scars, part-timer Sam also claimed bragging rights over his brother, a full-time professional cyclist.
I actually don't get to see him that often, so just to race with Ben was awesome, let alone to go 1-2. It's a dream come true. I love this race.
There's not much to see from the road, but behind the security checkpoint, Bayada processes 900,000 chickens a week at its Beresfield plant. 700 people are directly employed here, plus 400 foreign workers engaged by labour hire companies. A van load of workers arrived while we were filming, and our presence ruffled a few feathers with security. Bayada, which owns Steggles, has announced it will repay $500,000 to employees, saying it's a priority to ensure that contractors' workers are being paid correctly and treated fairly. The union says the company is cleaning up its act, but has a long way to go.
$500,000 is a drop in the bucket to what is owed to a predominantly temporary international workforce. I think it's probably closer to $10 million, based on the facts and the evidence that we've collected over the last 3.5 years.
The base minimum rate is $25.60.
We have evidence that clearly suggests the lowest paid have been $7.70 an hour, and in some respects, $10, $11, $12 an hour, up to 90 hours a week. In some respects, we've had evidence that suggests 27 hours straight.
According to the unions, some foreign workers pay $100 a week to share a house with 30 others. Grant Courtney says they're paid peanuts while their bosses drive around in luxury cars. Union records show 50 outstanding claims from workers on 417 visas who have few rights.
As soon as they flag that they have an issue, the employer's going to get rid of them.
Bayada will establish a hotline for employees who believe they've been underpaid. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. A historic apology was made at the Anglican Synod on Saturday for the shameful treatment of abuse survivors in the past. And in video interviews, two Hunter Anglican priests, Bob Peaty and Les Forrester, courageously recounted stories of being sexually abused as children. Today, another stunning revelation. The Bishop of Newcastle is himself a survivor of sexual abuse, dating back to the 1970s.
The story of my own abuse started here in Newcastle. And in this church. And I left 35 years ago.
Greg Thompson fled to the Northern Territory and says he's kept it a secret since then, only telling immediate family.
I was a young student at university when these matters happened. And people who were clearly familiar with grooming and seeking out young men.
Like many survivors, he put it to the back of his mind to cope, but the Synod provided reassurance to finally step forward.
For me to speak today was unplanned, and it was prompted really by a sequence of our church and our community being a safer place to speak up.
Despite the abuse, incredibly, he didn't turn his back on religion, but admits there were times he questioned the church.
But you hang in there because of people. And you hang in because of faith, which is bigger than the church, bigger than the institution.
The perpetrators are former Anglican bishop and senior clergyman. The matter's before the Royal Commission and police.
Those people are no longer with us in this life, and I hope they are able to face in the next life what they've done.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
A piece of Newcastle's cultural history, potentially going for a song.
It would be lovely to get the theatre for $1. That's something I could afford right now. It's in my back pocket, so yes, it would be great.
The dollar deal is apparently designed to lure a buyer keen to restore the 1870s theatre, the oldest in mainland Australia.
From a community point of view, we could use it for so many different aspects, like with the loft used to have with the underage concerts. We could have dance schools, we could have theatre shows. There's so much potential and so much space inside of this theatre, and it still retains a lot of its beauty that it had in its heyday.
Photos from the selling agent hint at that grandeur, but restoration would be costly, estimated at $10 million. A community group using the tagline "Restore the Vic" met last night.
Try and either, get the building for ourselves in some way, shape or form, or to work with a developer or somebody who's got the same passions or same directions and goals that we have.
It would be the ideal, medium-sized venue that the city really desperately needs and has needed for a long time.
Newcastle Herald theatre critic Ken Longworth says his love of theatre began at the Victoria, watching a performance there as a child.
It's important not just to keep the theatre as a venue, but to keep it as the thing it was intended to be.
Revive the Vic supporters are working to a tight deadline. The building goes to auction in less than 4 weeks.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a normal day, but we do see a lot of wildlife up at 1 Mile Beach. they won't annoy you if you don't annoy them.
It looks a treat and ready to race. It's got a camber on it, and the trainers seem to be really happy with it, but we're waiting to run our first meeting on it to prove itself.
The person that's successful in the position needs a very broad business background, and also enthusiasm, communications with the public.
Aaron Moy is one of the A-League's best dead ball specialists. In the FFA Cup, he finished off Edgeworth with a double. Last night, he was instrumental as Melbourne City beat the Mariners 3-1. This Friday, Jets defenders will have the task of shutting him down. Daniel Mullen says they'll take plenty of heart from their efforts in the opening 3 rounds.
It's more about doing the same, keeping compact and getting numbers around the ball and making it hard for him to play. It's very competitive. If we're conceding in training, then we're not happy, and that comes out into the games.
City also has another weapon up front.
You can see that they got some quality players. However, we're still going to go over there expecting to win.
With Lee Kee still on light duties and midfielder Leonardo missing today's session, Newcastle's squad will be finalised later in the week. The likes of Mitch Cooper and Lachlan Jackson could be in line for a call-up.
The players that have come in have done a job, and we're confident in every single one of their ability.
Keeper Mark Birighitti continues to push for a return from the facial injuries he suffered against the Sky Blues. But with Ben Kennedy proving vital in the win over the Victory, the coach has plenty to ponder.
Competition for places, that's what it's all about. It's a healthy thing for a squad, and yeah, it'll give Scotty a bit of a headache, but that's a good thing.
moored with nowhere to go. It's been 9 weeks since fishing was banned in Fullerton Cove and Tillagary Creek, deemed too dangerous in the wake of a toxic chemical leak linked to RAF base Williamtown. For families whose livelihoods rely on the waterways, it's been devastating.
There's no income financially and emotionally. It's very hard.
It's not about to get any easier either, with the EPA today extending that ban for another 8 months while a health risk assessment is carried out. Chantel Walker, whose husband is a third-generation commercial fisherman, believes the decision will send her family bankrupt.
You know, to pack up and move somewhere, it costs money, and money we don't have.
The toxic chemicals contained in firefighting foam may no longer be in use, but the fallout is far from over. The potential contamination zone now covers more than 650 households. State Labor MP Kate Washington is calling on the Commonwealth to provide disaster funding to affected residents until they can be properly compensated.
We saw that following the April storms. That mechanism could be set in train again in these circumstances.
Meanwhile, Hunter Water has confirmed it's found no trace of the chemicals in water drawn from its nearby aquifer.
So essentially there's a double checking process to make sure that when we do draw water from the Tomago sandbeds and feed it back into the drinking water supply, that it's 100% safe for consumption.
Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
It is important to have these discussions about what is right for communities like Beresfield, which I believe should be with Newcastle, and neighbouring communities like Woodbury and Raymond Terrace in a very respectful way. The irony is that Raymond Terrace is closer to Newcastle than it is to Port Stephens.
It was a final say for locals before the pack makes a determination on the development at Morisset Park.
It's a 188 berth marina which is already approved, 250 residential apartments, a mixture of long-term and short-term stay, a hotel and function centre and a restaurant.
The plan was approved in September 2009, but Johnson Property has since made changes, the land-based modifications debated today.
It is an increase of about 19% of floor space from the last concept plan approved.
He claims that makes it viable for operators. The local action group argues it's a gross overdevelopment, plus they're concerned about increased traffic.
We're not NIMBYs. We've never said there shouldn't be any development on the site. We have simply said that the development should be in sympathy with the existing area.
The majority of locals moved to Morisset Park to have a relaxing, quiet retirement.
Much of the planning process is lacking transparency, and the process seems to be very much favouring developers.
A decision is expected in 2 weeks. The developer plans to start work next year. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
times have been a bit difficult, and this grant will get us, see us through until at least Christmas.
It's not just a tourist site, it's not just an education facility, it's also essentially a custodian of our emergency supply of water for Hunter Water.
Two players with speed to burn, but the Knights could only afford to keep one. Having gained experience in the top grade this year, Nathan Ross has earned an upgrade. Meanwhile, NBN News can reveal senior Knights official Warren Smiles has left the club after 20 years of service. Smiles had filled a variety of roles during his time with the club, most recently as football operations manager. The club confirmed Smiles' departure today, but declined to comment further on the situation. The news comes as the club prepares to announce changes to its football department under new head coach Nathan Brown. An official announcement regarding the restructure is expected next week when Chief Executive Matt Gidley returns from annual leave. Newcastle and Hunter Rugby Union officials met with clubs last night to outline proposed changes to next year's competition. Proposals include the scrapping of Colts, while a new under-19s competition will be introduced. However, Premier 1 clubs won't be required to field an under-19s to remain in the top-tier competition. Paddy Kilmurray, NBN News.
Having made an impressive debut in the Grand Prix series, Jason Doyle had the chance to win round 12 in Australia until a crash in the final put him in hospital. Fellow Hunter rider Sam Masters is confident Doyle will return.
He's still in a bad way and he's in hospital, but he's tough and he'll be back on his feet soon and he doesn't give up.
Masters made his own headlines following a run-in with Denmark's Nicky Pedersen and one of his mechanics.
And I only threw my arms up at him and he rode over to me and started giving me a bit of abuse. Nicky's always involved in that sort of stuff and I really regret doing that, but it just takes a little bit too far.
Masters says he doesn't have a major problem with Pedersen, but other riders have clearly had enough.
A lot of them come up to me and said, good on you. That's something waiting to happen and unfortunately I had to do it.
The 24-year-old will head to the UK next week to renew his visa and begin negotiations for the 2016 European season. Meanwhile, Aaron Russell was showing off the spoils of victory today following his V8 Ute Series win on the Gold Coast.
Didn't really have any expectations going up there, new car, new track. I just wanted to get laps around that track. Next year we want to be pushing pretty hard for an enduro spot.
Having driven the circuit for the first time, Russell is hoping to be back next year in the main game.
The Utes are a bit rough over there. You feel like you're killing the car each lap going over there, so I think in a supercar it'd just be wicked.
It seems when it comes to general managers, the revolving door never stops at Newcastle Council. And last night, another got the boot.
I'm not going to apologise for having very high standards.
Last night's meeting of council ended with a vote on the future of GM Ken Goldthorpe. The end result, the termination of his 5-year contract. The sacking came just hours after he received a pass mark of 6.5 out of 10 for his performance review.
It's a bare pass mark and really still a pass mark. And we want a general manager who is excelling.
The decision now could become an expensive exercise for ratepayers.
There obviously will be under the terms, and that all employees are entitled to.
To me, that means there's a massive liability in it, excess of $1 million this council could be liable for.
Ken Goldthorpe was appointed by council, then headed by former Lord Mayor Jeff McCloy back in 2013 with a clear briefing, reel in finances. In his 2-year tenure, the bottom line did improve by up to $40 million, but it seems that wasn't enough to save him.
There have been some good outcomes in the last 2 years for the organisation of council, but there has been a whole range of shortfalls.
It has one councillor calling for an urgent investigation.
I'm calling that they suspend council for a period of 3 months and have the Office of Local Government to investigate.
A spokesperson from the Office of Local Government today said they're making inquiries into the matter, while the Hunter Business Chamber is just as concerned.
There's been a lot of GMs come and go over the last few years at Newcastle Council. Maybe it's something that needs to be looked at in regards to the councillors' practices rather than the GM's performance.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment.
Like to expand on that?
No.
Frank Cordingley has been named caretaker in the new role of CEO. Michael Kane, NBN News.
It's the small school that made a big noise. For 2 years, parents, teachers and students from Martins Creek Public School near Maitland have battled with the state government to keep the school gates open after it attracted just 6 students this year. Now, an inquiry commissioned by the government into the closure of several public schools statewide has recommended the minister reverse his initial decision to close the school to enable Sue Coots' son, who has complex needs, to complete his schooling there.
You've got that community base, so you've sort of got the supports of other parents, you've got the supports of families, you've got the supports of teaching staff, you build up that communication with them, you get that support.
In a statement to NBN News today, the minister wouldn't confirm whether the school would remain open, saying the government is considering the recommendations from the Select Committee on the closure of public schools and will respond in due course.
It's very close to the end of the term now, so we are pretty desperate to hear what the department will say, and what we're really afraid of is that the department is not going to say anything. It's going to ignore the recommendations of the inquiry.
Georgina Smythe, NBN News. At just 3 years old, little Oliver Wood and his parents have a lot on their plate. After being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in April this year, Mum Kerry has to keep him on a strict diet and routine schedule.
Through the night, we'll have to get up and actually test his blood glucose level. So obviously that's interrupted sleep. If it's during the day, he'll actually have symptoms. So if he's going high, he can be cranky and hard to get along with.
New research by the John Hunter Children's Hospital could soon ease the burden of the disease by calculating a more accurate dosage of required insulin through fats and proteins. Dosage is currently based on an expected intake of carbohydrates, but researcher Dr. Carmel Smart says that method can be inaccurate.
What families have told me is that although blood glucose levels might look fine 3 hours after eating, about 5 to 6 hours after eating, blood glucose levels go really high.
The research is thanks to a $400,000 grant from the Australian Type 1 Diabetes Clinical Research Network. The hospital is hoping to use the funds to create a way to keep glucose levels stable for longer and reduce extremes often experienced by patients.
What we're aiming to develop is an app to allow patients to then more easily determine how much insulin is required and in what way it should be distributed for fat and protein foods.
Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
There will always be some workers who wish to work on a public holiday, and that's fine with us. Where we have a problem is that the retail industry, that's generally not the case. Our experience has been that people are forced and intimidated and harassed to work.
Our region has a proud history of producing Olympic athletes. Today, legends such as Natalie Ward, Donna Proctor and Michelle Andrews joined Rio hopefuls Scott Westcott and Daniel Repicoli to launch the Hunter Olympic Dinner. Repicoli is hoping to qualify for his 4th appearance at the Games.
I'm shooting really well at the moment, and as long as everything keeps going the way it is, I'll be in medal contention for sure in Rio.
Scott Westcott recently ran a qualifying time in Berlin.
A couple of days after I turned 40, so it was supposed to be just a celebration of being 40 and it might turn into something more, so really hoping I can run a little bit faster and confirm an Olympic spot for next year.
He'll run another marathon in Japan in March, hoping to secure one of 3 spots.
I know what it's like to not be an Olympian. I've not been an Olympian 5 times, qualified for 4 of the last 5 Olympics, so it would be like a nice little silver lining just about hanging in there.
Triathlete Aaron Royal already has Rio on his mind, deciding to rest a calf injury rather than race in Noosa or the Bahamas.
The tear that it is now, it's about a 4 to 6 week injury. I was planning on having 4 weeks off anyway, so there's really not a lot of time lost in terms of preparation time for next year. So that's a positive. It just would have been nice if the body could have held out for another 2 weeks.
As he prepares to return to Melbourne, Jason Hoffman wants to look his best. Friday's match also happens to coincide with the Movember round. Today, Hoff cleared the slate in readiness.
Well, coming from a German background, I think Rudi Völler had a famous, moustache. So if I can get a thick, little short one like he had, then, I'll be happy.
Hoffman spent 4 years at City before signing with the Jets in the off-season. He says leaving his hometown made him a better person on and off the field. While he's happy to be back at the Jets, Hoffman has a point to prove to his old club.
To leave Melbourne and have the challenge ahead of us this week, it's just that extra motivation this weekend to, do well for Newcastle first and foremost, but also to try and, remind people in Melbourne that, I'm better than I was last year as well.
The Jets kept a clean sheet against the Victory on Friday night. The defence will be bolstered by the return of Lee Kee-Jee, who has returned to full training with the main group.
Kee-Jee's fit and available, and he'll obviously add a lot to the squad if he gets selected.
With Leonardo in doubt, Scott Miller could be forced into a reshuffle. Cameron Watson and Mitch Cooper could enter the frame, while Mark Birighitti may have to bide his time behind Ben Kennedy.
First job in, he had some great saves throughout the match, and Victory have managed to score a lot of goals throughout the year already, so BK did his chances no harm.
Paddy Kilmurray, NBN News.
A Hunter cold case that's finally heating up. On April 6, 1982, 31-year-old Elizabeth Dixon was found stabbed to death in her car at Ashtonfield near Maitland. Betty was stabbed 27 times, 5 times in the heart. A grisly detail in a case that was without a lead for decades. Yesterday marked a breakthrough, with detectives arriving at the house of 64-year-old Rodney Lawrence in Stockton before taking him back to Raymond Terrace Police Station and charging him with her murder. The accused can be seen shaking his head and hands as he's taken into custody. The arrest follows a tip-off from the public in August this year after a reward for information was tripled to $150,000 in 2013. Lawrence appeared calm as he was led into Maitland Local Court in handcuffs. He was formally refused bail. His lawyer is expected to make a bail application next week. The accused will reappear via video link in Newcastle Local Court next month. Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
The aftermath of the dismissal of Newcastle City Council's now former general manager continues, with Ken Goldthorpe confirming he's not going down without a fight.
He would certainly have rights at common law to pursue an action for damages.
It all stems from a performance review signed off by the Lord Mayor, which allocated a pass mark to the GM, but hours later he was out of a job. Solicitor Conrad Curry from Catherine Henry Partners says Mr Goldthorpe has a solid case.
He was on a 5-year contract. He's definitely got rights to pursue in terms of breach of contract and the early termination of his contract, and that would be, of course, for compensation.
Meanwhile, the Property Council says investor confidence could take a hit from the fallout.
It takes months to recruit for these positions. There's no doubt that it will spook some investors around town. It puts at risk the $1.1 billion pipeline that's fueling new jobs in the city centre at the moment. We've had some political doublespeak that could have come out of an episode of Yes Minister.
The Hunter Business Chamber was just as scathing.
To have this cloud over us at this point in time is not positive for business. If you ran your business in this way, in terms of the principles of good corporate governance, it would look really bad to your customers and clients.
Michael Kane, NBN News. His name is Todd Dazzler. His job description, an extractor of stories. And the teller of many.
I'm really committed to storytelling and what storytelling does for people.
Garth Russell's new adventure is all about helping young people build self-confidence.
I thought I could either present it as me, or I could come up with some buffhead in a beanie and a singlet and shorts and Ugg boots and make it more humorous. If you can get people entertained and get them laughing, that whole storytelling thing becomes that much more relaxed.
His line of work has been helped by his years of experience in acting and presenting.
Everything I've done in life has led to this.
Getting people to open up, no matter who they are or where they're from, isn't easy. Recently, a 16-year-old spoke to Garth about a very personal struggle.
He'd literally very seriously contemplated suicide because of the bullying. You could hear a pin drop. So, yeah, one minute you got the kids laughing, the next minute this young fellow felt comfortable enough to share that particular story.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
Leonardo was one of Newcastle's busiest players against victory, an effort which has kept him off the pitch ever since.
I think that output showed in his body, and he's just had that inflammation of his knee all week. The intention with Leonardo is to give him all the chance possible to get on that flight down to Melbourne this afternoon.
With an assessment like this from City's coach,
Leonardo I know very well. He's a player I worked with at Ajax, so he's unpredictable. Out of nothing he can make something, and he's a great guy as well. So I wish him all the best, only not tomorrow.
It's no wonder Scott Miller wants to keep his rival guessing about the Brazilian's chances of playing. There's good news for Lee Ki-ji, with medical staff giving the defender the all-clear to play 90 minutes. Miller was due to choose his starting keeper when the team arrived in Melbourne, admitting Mark Birighitti and Ben Kennedy both deserved to start. Melbourne City is coming off a strong win over the Mariners, where Aaron Moy and import Bruno Fornaroli starred. The Jets' mentor still believes the Victorians are beatable.
They've got threats in the final third, but with our structure and back four, the way they've been demonstrating their commitment and organisation, we should be able to hold them out.
Meanwhile, Labano Haliti underwent surgery on his torn ACL this morning. The Jets are still in the process of finding a replacement.
We made an offer for one player, and that was rejected based upon the financial restrictions, and he's gone to Malaysia instead, so it's an ongoing process.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
The Wells boys live and breathe baseball. It's here in Belmont where it all began. While Lachlan spent 2015 playing rookie ball with the Twins, Alex remained patient. He pitched locally with Belmont before his chance arrived.
Every couple of weeks I'd just ask him, has anything been happening? And then when he went up to the Australian Baseball Academy, it all started to happen there. He got like a bit of interest, and then when we got to the World Championships in Japan, he put pen to paper, which is pretty awesome.
They tell me that you actually signed for $1 more than him. Is that true?
Rumours are that, yeah, it's true.
While I won't disclose how much the pair earn, it's a deal they couldn't refuse, leaving their family and friends behind. Today they watch them throw, just like they have countless times before. The grind through the minor leagues is underway, and they love it.
That's what the minor leagues are. Long grind, day in, day out, trying to get to that next level.
Yeah, definitely big leagues. That's what everyone wants to go for, I guess. Any Australian youngster who's signed a professional contract and wants to aim to go straight to the big leagues, but you've got to work hard.
They say Twins are close, and the Wells boys are no exception. While they plan to see each other, it could be from the opposite side of the diamond.
Yeah, that's true. Might get a match-up, Wells versus Wells in the States next year, so that'll be good. Hopefully get out there and get the W against him.
We'll still stay in contact, obviously. Just won't see each other every day. Won't be able to give each other a little bit of hurry-carry every now and then.